My name is Marcus Vance, and I wasn't fired in a blaze of drama. I wasn't escorted out by security. There were no raised voices, no slamming doors, just a quiet Tuesday, a polite meeting invite, and a smiling man in a suit who thanked me for my contributions. That's how it ends, right? 7 years of building something from nothing erased with a folder and a forced handshake. I didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't even blink. Because I knew the moment I saw the second chair in the room, my seat was already gone. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was how deeply I was woven into what they thought was just revenue. I wasn't just closing accounts. I was building relationships with people who trusted me with their reputations. I wasn't just running departments. I was carrying the weight of their mistakes without complaint. And maybe that was my fault, being too silent, too reliable, too invisible. But I learned something in that silence. I learned how to watch people, how to listen, how to remember. You see, when you build from the ground up, you don't just build systems, you build loyalty, you build character. And when they cut me out like a diseased limb, they forgot something important. The heart doesn't forget where the blood used to flow. The man who let me go, his name was Dalton Pierce, new VP, fresh out of some West Coast incubator with a trophy wife and too many buzzwords. He wore ambition like cologne, overpowering synthetic, and meant to distract from the sweat of inexperience. He told me the company was moving in a new direction, that my leadership style was appreciated but misaligned with our future goals. What he meant was, you're not cutthroat enough. You don't play politics well enough. You've become a threat. But he said it with a smile, and I nodded. Because there's something satisfying about watching a man underestimate you while thinking he's being clever. I walked out of that office with my shoulders back. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I knew something he didn't. My worth was never tied to a title, and my power never came from their permission. I spent the next 48 hours in stillness, not spiraling, not raging, just watching, observing what they were about to discover. Because in their eyes, I was disposable, replaceable, a cog. But in the eyes of the people I worked with, the clients I fought for, I was the bridge. And now the bridge was gone. The first call came that evening. A client I'd brought in during our second year, one who tripled their contract because I'd answered a support call at midnight to help them fix a crisis. He didn't call to say goodbye. He called to say, "What the hell is going on?" And then came another and another. They hadn't just let me go. They'd opened the door to doubt, to discontent, to disconnection. They replaced trust with a stranger in a suit, and trust doesn't transfer like a password. See, I never built a network. I built friendships. I remembered their kids' names. I sent flowers when parents passed. I showed up not because it was policy, but because it was right. And when people feel seen, they don't forget it. Within a week, 6 of our top 10 clients paused their projects. Reviewing alignment, they said. In truth, they were waiting to see where I would go, waiting to follow. Dalton tried to control the fire, tried to charm them with his whiteboard visions and quarterly buzzwords. But charm doesn't rebuild bridges. It doesn't fix what arrogance breaks. And soon the board started asking questions. That's when they reached out. Jennifer Hale, the COO, a woman who once called me indispensable during a shareholder meeting, emailed asking if I'd consult during the transition, a euphemism for help us clean up the mess we made when we kicked you out. I declined, politely, and got back to building. Because while they were trying to stop the bleeding, I was starting something new. A former competitor reached out, said he'd been following my work for years, offered a blank canvas. "Build it your way," he said. I said yes, but only under one condition. We do this with soul. We build something they can't replicate. And we did. I didn't hunt down my former clients. Didn't need to. They came to me, one by one, drawn not by pitch decks, but by principle, by the memory of being treated like more than numbers, by the kind of trust that doesn't expire when the logo changes. What we built wasn't just a rival company, it was a reminder that value lives in people, that relationships are the real currency, and that when you cut down the tree that bore you fruit, don't be surprised when you go hungry. Dalton was let go 6 months later. Internal memo said strategic misalignment. But I know the truth. He tried to lead with ego, but this industry, this world, it still runs on humans. Jennifer called again, this time with humility. She asked if I'd consider returning, executive position, more money, more control, but less soul. I said no, not out of spite, but because I wasn't walking backward, I was building forward, and what I was building couldn't be bought. They let me go without a fight. Now they're fighting to survive, and me, I'm thriving. Not because I won, but because I learned. Because I took the hit, took the silence, took the humiliation, and turned it into clarity, into purpose, into vision. See, revenge isn't always loud. It's not screaming or slamming doors. It's not slashing tires or sending angry emails. Sometimes revenge is soft, still, patient, like water carving through stone without a sound. They wrote me off in a boardroom, but the people I'd served, they rewrote me into something bigger. I walk into meetings now, not as an employee, but as the architect of trust, of integrity, of something they can't touch. I don't need to tell my story at conferences. My clients tell it for me, in the way they refuse to leave, in the way they refer others without being asked, in the way they remember who stood beside them when things were hard. Dalton once said during an all-hands meeting, "We're only as good as our last quarter." He was wrong. We're only as good as how we treat people when no one is watching. And when I look at what we've built now, a culture of empathy, of excellence, without ego, of loyalty, without leashes, I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude. Because if they hadn't let me go, I might have stayed small, safe, silent. Instead, I was forced to grow. They let me go without a fight, but I found my fire in the fall. And now, while they scramble to explain their losses, I sit at the table I built surrounded by people who chose me, not because they had to, but because they believed in what I stood for. Some exits are just the beginning of the story. And this one was the beginning of my legacy. There's a strange peace that comes when you realize the storm didn't break you. It shaped you. I remember the day the industry article dropped headline "Bold Smug," like it knew what it was doing. Major talent, Exodus leaves, Veltrix reeling amid leadership shakeup. I didn't share it, didn't even comment. But my phone lit up like it was my birthday. Text from Leo. "You seeing this?" You're in the subtext. Subtext. That's where most of my power lives now. Not in big declarations, but in the quiet truth that people pass around like gospel. If you want it done right, call Marcus Vance. The new company Argon and Slate wasn't flashy. We didn't launch with fanfare or champagne. We just worked. Quietly, consistently, unshakably. We built our values first: loyalty over leverage, service over scale, relationships over revenue. And in a world obsessed with quarterly wins, we played the long game. We called our clients after hours not for upsells, but just to check in. We didn't offer discounts, we offered results. And when mistakes happened, because they always do, we owned them before the client could even ask. That's what they could never understand at Veltrix. That character doesn't come from job titles. It comes from how you show up when nobody's watching. Within a year, we didn't just match my old department's numbers. We surpassed them, with half the staff and none of the politics. And when I brought on my first hire, Jonas, a former intern, who'd once been overlooked because he was too quiet, I told him something I'd wish someone had told me. Your silence is not a flaw. It's a weapon when paired with substance. He's a director now, and his clients speak about him the way mine speak about me. That's the ripple effect. You don't build legacies through dominance. You build them through decency. But real growth isn't linear. It's messy. It asks you to revisit every scar and reassign its meaning. There were nights I questioned it. Nights I wondered if I should have played the game. Maybe smiled more. Laughed at Dalton's hollow jokes. Maybe then I'd still have my corner office. But then I remember the day one of my clients, Miriam, called me in tears. Not because of a pricing issue, but because her mother had passed and I was the only one from her vendor list who'd remembered. I'd sent a handwritten note 6 months prior when she mentioned the illness. She framed it, put it beside her mom's photo, and that's when I knew this was the work. This was the reward. Because when you do things with heart, people don't just hire you, they trust you. And trust is the one asset no spreadsheet can measure, but every empire is built on. When the acquisition offer came, Veltrix bruised and bleeding, asking if we'd consider absorbing their tech stack, I laughed. Not out of mockery, out of disbelief. The same people who tossed me aside now wanted a seat at my table. I didn't gloat, didn't throw it back in their face. Instead, I made a single request. We do this with integrity. Every Veltrix employee gets a fair interview. No mass layoffs, no scapegoats. Because revenge isn't burning their house. It's building yours so strong that they beg to live in its shadow. The deal closed quietly. No press releases. Just a line on a legal document. But I saw the looks. The way the remaining Veltrix staff watched me walk the halls of the company I'd once bled for. Now theirs in all but name. I didn't rub it in. I pulled them into meetings. Asked them questions no one had bothered to ask in years. What are you good at? What do you want to do here? And the answers cracked something open in me. Because even the ones who'd once looked the other way as I was being pushed out, they were just surviving, just like I had been. That's when I stopped calling it revenge. It wasn't anymore. It was restoration of dignity, of direction, of something sacred that had been lost. I promoted the receptionist who'd been writing marketing copy in her spare time, gave the night shift tech analyst his first shot at leadership, and when I walked past my old office, I didn't reclaim it. I gave it to my team lead, told him this room needs a new story now. That's what they'll never teach you in business school. That leadership is not about being the loudest voice. It's about creating space for others to rise. I built a culture where people don't whisper their ideas. They own them. Where failure isn't punished, it's processed. Where leaving work on time isn't a red flag, it's a sign that you built the system right. And as the quarters rolled by, as our growth accelerated beyond projections, I didn't measure success in dollars. I measured it in birthdays remembered, in employees who no longer checked Slack at midnight, in clients who called us partners instead of vendors. That's the legacy, not the title, not the corner office, but the people who stand a little taller because you believed in them first. So yes, they let me go without a fight, but they didn't realize they weren't letting me go. They were releasing me, unintentionally, into my purpose, into the future they couldn't envision. And now they're the ones clawing for relevance, fighting to survive in a game they forgot how to play because they thought it was about profit. But it was always about people. Some exits are a quiet mercy, a door that closes so another can swing wide open. And if you're standing in that moment now, if they've pushed you out, cut you loose, told you with a smile that your time has passed, let me tell you something, they never will. You are not lost. You are being reforged. And one day, they will watch what you become and know the truth. They let you go without a fight. But you were just getting started.